On February 28, 2026, President Donald Trump announced the launch of what he called major combat operations against Iran. In an 8-minute video posted to social media, he described sweeping U.S.-Israeli airstrikes that struck nuclear facilities, missile sites, naval bases, and leadership targets across the country. He claimed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been killed, though Iran immediately denied it, and vowed that American bombing would continue as long as necessary to bring peace throughout the Middle East. He openly called on the Iranian people to overthrow their government. This was not a surgical strike or a defensive response. It was the beginning of a sustained offensive campaign aimed at regime change. The United States Constitution is unambiguous on this point. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress alone the power to declare war. The framers placed that authority in the legislative branch for a reason: to ensure that no single person could drag the nation into prolonged, costly conflict without the deliberate consent of the people's representatives. They had lived under a king who waged wars at will, and they deliberately designed a republic that would never allow that again. The 1973 War Powers Resolution, often called the War Powers Act, was Congress's attempt to enforce that constitutional line after Vietnam. Its core provision, Section 2C, is crystal clear: the President's constitutional powers as Commander-in-Chief to introduce American forces into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated are exercised only pursuant to one of three things: a declaration of war by Congress, specific statutory authorization, or a national emergency created by an actual attack on the United States, its territories, or its armed forces. None of those three conditions exist here. There's no declaration of war, there's no new specific authorization for use of military force passed by Congress, and there has been no attack on the United States or its forces that created a national emergency. The War Powers Act therefore does not apply as a source of authority. It does not give the President permission to act. In fact, it expressly limits him. Because none of the statutory triggers are met, the President is operating outside the only legal framework Congress ever created to govern these situations. The administration may claim imminent threats from Iran's nuclear program or proxy militias, but no public evidence has been presented showing an attack on America was hours or days away. Preemptive war for regime change is not the narrow self-defense exception the War Powers Act recognizes. The administration may try to stretch the old 2001 or 2002 authorizations for use of military force, but those laws targeted al-Qaeda and Iraq, not the sovereign state of Iran. And calling this limited is laughable. The President himself described it as major combat operations, with expected American casualties and no fixed end date. This is exactly the kind of unilateral, offensive war of choice the Constitution and the War Powers Act were written to prevent. By launching it without congressional approval, President Trump has stepped outside both the founding document and the only statute designed to restrain presidential war-making. The power to send Americans into major combat belongs to the people's elected representatives in Congress, not to any one person in the Oval Office. That line exists for a reason. Today, it was crossed. I'm Machine Pun Kelly, and thanks for watching. If you learned something, don't forget to click like and subscribe.